Hi, everyone. Welcome to Desert Sage Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Befford, coming to you on the 9th of January, 2023. Thank you for being here. In the last Walk and Talk, which was titled The Covert Invisible War and Solutions, I talked primarily about the covert war that's being waged against humanity, primarily the war against our psyches, the war against our emotions. And there's no doubt in my mind that this is what we went through in the last 2.5 years is this is military grade psychological operations, with obviously the involvement of the intelligence agencies and whatnot. And we talked about the difference between overt and covert, and I know at one point in the video I mixed the two terms up. That happens sometimes, and I apologize for that, folks. I get it wrong on occasion. Hopefully it didn't cause too much of an issue for people. I hope you understood the concept, the overall concept of what I was trying to get across. I want to talk for a few minutes about the different levels of knowing, because in the last Walk and Talk, I mentioned that you had to, we were dealing with a spiritual war. So you can't address this in the conventional way. We're dealing with a psychological warfare. You can't address it the way that you would your typical, what we would consider to be overt warfare against humanity. You have to look at these problems and the solutions with a different set of eyes. You have to have a different level of discernment. And I alluded to intuition being that different way of knowing and discovering the truth. There are many different ways of knowing. People say that they know you. Oh, I know so-and-so. On what level? And generally they'll base it off of whatever experience they happen to have with that individual. So we can say that, that we know someone. There's also different levels of intellectual knowing or knowledge, intellect. Not intelligence, not holistic intelligence, but intellect. There are ways of knowing things and discovering things, and don't get me wrong. There's a difference between authority, when I talk about authority, and those people that can speak as experts in their particular field because of their experiences. I like to define faith as confidence through experience. And I started doing these podcasts, and I got on social media, on Facebook particularly. My wife encouraged me to do that. And so far it's been a good experience to be able to get my work on natural law out there to people. It's been a good experience. But you see people on Facebook, and I've reached out to people that I've known in the past, whether I knew them through grade school, high school, military, my career in law enforcement, my experiences in the government at all different levels of government service and employment, and knowing through the work I've done on myself. Knowing myself, which I've emphasized in the past, is the most important thing to do. You've got to know yourself first, then know your enemy. You have to know your enemy as well. And we are fighting a spiritual, psychological, physical war as well. People that say that they know someone. The point I'm trying to get to here is that there's different levels and different ways of knowing. And we can know through experience and through gaining knowledge of the self, that gnosis, and knowledge of the external world, the reality of the external world, of what's going on around us. And, we are in a condition of slavery, folks. Humanity is in a condition of slavery and has been for centuries. You'll notice now, what's amazing to me is you'll notice now there's more and more unveiling. And a lot of people say, particularly those that are religious leaning that we're going through this great awakening now, with everything that's happening, with the elections and government corruption and what's the pharmaceutical industries and the whole COVID narrative and all of those things, where people are awakening now to the reality of what's happening here. And there's this unveiling that's occurring. Well, I've used the allegory of the Wizard of Oz throughout my presentations, and the Wizard of Oz is if you haven't seen and that's the other thing I wanted to touch on here for a minute is we have a lot of people who will tune in and start watching my podcasts at this point here, and whether it's they don't understand a lot of the concepts of the terms that I use, and I do the best I can to try to define terms, and I emphasize how important that is. That when I use a term like occult, we define those terms. Well, if you start coming in midstream on these podcasts, you're not going to know me, first of all, whether you think you know who I am or not because of a past experience you may have had with me, whether it's positive or negative. I base a lot of what I know on my experiences, my direct experiences, not what other people have told me, but my direct experiences, whether it's with religion, whether it's the judicial system, the military, law enforcement. So my recommendation to you, first off, before I dive into the meat of this presentation, is go back watch these presentations from the beginning. I've said all along that this is prerequisite knowledge. It's building blocks. It's important that you understand the terms that I use, where I come from, who I am, who it is that's talking to you, who it is that's speaking to you. You need to know. Otherwise, my recommendation is, why listen to me other than anybody else on this planet? If you don't know who I am and what my experiences are, which I outline in detail in the introductory video, you come in midstream here, you're likely to, first of all, be confused, not know what the hell I'm talking about, but you won't be able to put it in the context of the 10,000 foot picture that I'm trying to paint of the reality of what's facing us here now. And that is, we are in a condition of slavery. Whether you're a debt slave or whether or not you're a mental slave, your psyche, your intellect, and your emotions have been manipulated. You've been indoctrinated to believe things that simply aren't true. We have been conditioned our entire life to, number one, have an illegitimate belief in the authority of government. And I've talked about this many times too, but if you come in and you listen to me saying something like this, without putting it in the context of my other presentations and the building blocks that I talked about here, you're going to think, well, this guy's he's an anarchist. Yes, I am. But you need to understand what that term means. It doesn't mean without rules. It means without rulers. It doesn't mean chaos. Like you have been indoctrinated to believe. You've been triggered. Your subconscious is. But when I mention a term like the occult, and I've talked about this before too, immediately people conjure up, visions of people in the forest sacrificing cats. Satanists. And, if you haven't listened to a word I've said about the satanic mindset and what true Satanism really is, go back and listen to my presentations, on the tenets of Satanism, which really is egotism. It's the self. I've talked about this before as well. It's the worship of the self. The first tenet is solipsism, the belief that there is no such thing as objective truth. My truth is the only truth that exists. Look, folks, I've said this many times too, perception is not truth. Perception is not reality. Your perceptions, your five sensory illusory perceptions are limited. And what you can see on the light spectrum, I've talked about this many times, I talked about in the last video the truth discovery method. Well, how do you find out? How do you discover the truth? Well, first of all, when you've lived and had the experiences that I have had, whether growing up, having flus, being sick where I thought I was going to die many times, even as an adult, and being able to contrast that experience and what I understood and knew about viruses and getting sick and those conditions, health conditions, and what we experienced in the last 2.5 years, my knowledge and my understanding of wearing masks and staying away from each other and isolating and shutting down businesses and all of these things that were unprecedented because of this novel virus that was supposed to have decimated, humanity. I said from the very beginning, this was a socially engineered perception crisis. It's manufactured, and it's on the military grade level up here, folks. We're talking about master psychologists that work for these think tanks, government agencies, and institutions. And they understand this stuff, how to manipulate, how to capture your attention and your time, your thoughts and your emotions, and hence your behavior, your actions. And, I posted recently up on Facebook how humanity, it's almost like, humanity is walking around in this hypnotic state because they can't think for themselves, because they've been conditioned and manipulated by the media, by television, by newspaper, print. All forms of media are centrally controlled by just a handful of corporations, folks. And if you don't know that, you're well behind the curve here of what's going on. In the past, I've had experiences with, obviously, my career in law enforcement and the military, the Constitution. I understood about censorship, and all of these things, added up from the very beginning, how doctors were being censored. One of the things that for those of you that are in law enforcement, and I've said this before, the other thing that you might not get about these videos here is these podcasts are written with the primary audience being law enforcement and military people. And I've explained before why that's so important to reach out to them and to try to get them to come around to the reality of what's occurring and how they're being used and abused. Your government doesn't love you, soldiers, officers, deputies. They don't give a shit about you. Everybody that I've spoken to, those that are halfway decent law enforcement officers, whether you're retired or not, their intuition told them something was terribly wrong here. Something's different. Something's not right. And yet they sat back and they stood silent. And that's the beef I have with a lot of officers, particularly retired ones. Because you got yours now, you can sit back and not do anything, not say anything. Either for whatever your excuse is, I don't want to rock the boat, I don't want to look like a kook. Whatever your reason is, I want to keep my second job, my government subsidized work that I'm doing, whatever the case is, whatever your excuse is, you would deny the reality of what was occurring around us. Unprecedented, all this certainty that existed. They were certain about all these things, about the virus, where it originated from, although we're getting mixed messages about that intentionally to keep people in a state of confusion and fear, because they know that they can control you much better that way. You're much easier to manipulate when you're in a state of fear and confusion. Cops know that. You know how the human psyche works. But yet you didn't even have to rely on your knowledge of that. Your intuition told you something was wrong here. Same thing with military guys. You haven't been in the business if you don't trust your intuition or haven't developed a keen intuition, a knowing that is very difficult to explain to people. That sixth sense that, people like to talk about. What we're talking about is the development of intuition. Your ability to tap into, intuition, your internal voice, that true self. I talked, before about, the Gnostic, belief and or description of the self as being, three different entities. In essence, the essence or the authentic self, the true self, the ego, the false self, the one that you identify with, that you attach to, whether it was your previous roles, as a law enforcement officer, whatever it is, whatever you identify with, whatever you attach your identity to. And then there's the personality, the persona, the mask, the public face, that we put on, and a lot of times, I used the analogy before of who's driving the bus, the essence, the authentic self, the ego, or the personality. Do you know anything about yourself regarding those three? You won't know your essence because for most people, that's that tiny little voice at that loud, belligerent, obnoxious party that's in the corner like a little child that is shouted out and can't be heard because of the belligerentness of the people in the room. It's similar to that. It's a metaphor for that. And most people, it's something you have to develop. And I've talked repeatedly about, look, in this war, which could go physical, could go kinetic, but as the essence of who you are is very important, that spiritual aspect of who you are. And you do have a spiritual aspect. And that part of you, that inner voice, that essence of who you are, that divine spark of consciousness that's in every one of us, the thing that animates us and gives us our being. We all have that. We have the physical body too. You take care of it. When I said before, things you needed to do is activate the physical body. Treat it right. You've also got to, if you don't exercise your physical body, your muscles, they're going to atrophy and they'll be of no value to you. Same thing goes true with your intellect and your spiritual well-being as well. You have to do the spiritual work, whatever that might be. I'm not talking about religious work, and I get going back to knowing and knowing me in particular. When people tune in and they pick up halfway through these videos, these podcasts, and they go, is he religious? Is he a Christian? He talks about, quotes Christianity in the Bible and things like that. People, and I posted this in that PDF I put up on the Havasu Patriots website. And the thing that I expressed was that everybody wants to put you in a box. They want to put me in a box. Is he a Christian? Is he a Republican? Is he that? Is he this? Is he that? And I made it very clear that I'm all those things, but I'm none of those things. I understand Christianity because of my religious background. But I understand, and I have studied the esoteric or the hidden part of Christianity as opposed to the exoteric or the Christianity that's fed to the masses. The reason why you can't tell the difference between the literalness and the metaphors in the Bible and the allegories, and you're stuck on, the literal aspects of the Bible. I understand, I know what Christ's message was to us. My understanding, and although I don't label myself as a Christian, I follow Christ's teachings, and I've studied Christ's teachings, as I have many other messengers that the universe has sent us, and we somehow have a tendency to kill. Like Christ, who represented the truth. In the Bible, if those of you that do understand Christianity, read the Bible, understand, the masses wanted Barabbas. They would prefer a murderer be released than deal with Christ, the truth. They'd much rather deal with the truth, or deal with Barabbas, a murderer. The worst of society. They'd rather have them released and back into society than Christ. And I've said many, many times, look, this message isn't for everybody. I am not going to resonate with everyone here. If I do resonate with you, my recommendation again is go back to the damn beginning, like I said before, and watch from the beginning. And that includes understanding who I am and what my experiences are, so that you can give value or weight to the message that I'm trying to get across here. I'd like to see, more and more people come to understand, and I'll do the best I can. And I know I make mistakes in these videos. Research the things that I'm saying. I said many times, don't believe me. Don't believe a damn thing I'm saying. Go and do the work yourself. We can't afford to be intellectually lazy right now, folks. So you have to exercise your intellect as well as doing the spiritual work and the physical work, or they're all going to atrophy. They're all going to atrophy and be of no value when things really get bad. This COVID, crisis, this is just a running event. This is just a trial run, folks, at what's coming. And that's not to, invoke fear in you. I'm telling you there are solutions to it. I'm trying to describe to you what it is exactly, the reality of what is occurring here, and why the majority of people walk around like zombified, robots, animatons, intellectual animals, as what the Gnostic master Samael Aun Weor would describe. They're walking around automatic, on autopilot, with no conscious thought to the things, their thoughts, their emotions, or their actions. And nobody wants to do that shadow work, Nobody wants to take that internal look at themselves. They run from that just as quick and fast as possible. But that's what has to happen, folks. Why do you believe the things that you do? Is it through, because of generational issues? That you are Lutheran or Catholic or Muslim, practice Judaism, start questioning your beliefs is really the message of what I'm getting across to people, or trying to get across to people. And there's a difference between knowing and believing. Belief is the enemy of knowing. We talked about, the seen laws of the universe, thermodynamics and all of those things, the physical laws. But yet there's still many people that, although you can grasp the concept that the creator of the universe has put all of these laws in place, all of these laws, these boundary conditions in place, and exclude us from boundary conditions for human behavior, we're going to face the consequences of our behavior. Karma, and again, there's another term. I talked about universal, natural law being, karmic law, law of cause and effect, all that. Well, people have this cartoonish fucking version of what karma is. It isn't. When they think of karma, they think of the Roadrunner cartoons, when I was little. And as soon as the Roadrunner do something, or the coyote do something, wrong, some anvil would fall on his head immediately. There are immediate consequences for his actions. And that's not how karma works, folks. Individually or in the collective. There's a collective karma as well as individual karma. We don't always reap the immediate consequences of our individual karma. We don't see it right away. It'd be nice if it did happen. If every time you caused harm to somebody else, you get a 10,000 volt electric shock or something. Or a liar, pants on fire, and your pants actually caught on fire. Wouldn't that be nice? If there were immediate consequences, chances are you wouldn't touch the hot stove or lie or cause harm to other people. Well, that's not how it works. You know, in the aggregate or in the collective or on the individual, karma really works over the long haul, over as a result of the collective. Yes, we do have our own individual karma, you know, and we will deal with the consequences of that, and that primarily that's through our own internal suffering. You know, that wheel of samsara that the Buddhists talk about, the wheel of suffering. We're our own worst enemies. We cause our own suffering. Well, that's not what, you know, the karma I'm talking about is the consequences of our collective failure to abide by natural law. You know, we're starting to see the karmic consequences, and I've said many times before that morality is directly related to our freedom. It's mathematical. There's a proportional formula. The degree that we exercise morality as a species here is to the degree that we'll have freedom. And our founders knew that. And when I talked about, you know, getting in front of the city council and talking about their violations of constitutional law, which is what the Havasu Patriots was all about, I went beyond that, though. Not only did you not have the constitutional authority, you violated the Constitution, which is written on the principles of natural law. You neither had the legal authority, nor did you have the moral authority to do the things you did. Shut down businesses, including the gym I went to, determine which ones could be open and closed, tell people to wear masks. You had no authority to do any of that, and yet they followed along. In many municipalities all over this country, you saw the same pattern. In many cases, it was monkey see, monkey do, because they didn't know what the fuck to do. They just simply didn't. So they just followed along. And we'll figure it out later. There's a whole spectrum of behaviors from governments, but almost everyone in lockstep, all over the world as well, in many countries, including Western democracies, were in lockstep. This has been in the making for many years, folks. You know, go back and look at some of the Rockefeller documents. Go back and look at some of the, you know, the documents from the World Economic Forum and some of these other institutions. Go back and look. Right now, you know, they put it out there in front of us. They've been planning these things for a long time. It's just now that veil is being lifted just a little bit, and you've been given a peek. You know, and if you're honest with yourself, you go back and look at the insanity that we've gone through in the last 2.5, almost going on 3 years now. And now there's, you know, a lot of backpedaling. There's, you know, things are starting to unfold. They're starting to come out. That unveiling includes the fact that we were lied to from the very beginning about the nature of COVID-19, the origins of it, the efficacies of masks and vaccines. All of this is now coming out. And most people are finding themselves, you know, particularly if you were one of those people that were part of the COVID cult, the COVIDians, that ridiculed and chastised those people that were selfish, you know, that wouldn't get the vaccine, the ones that you wanted to have killed, they should die. I hope they die. If you're one of those people, I'm sure there's, you know, a lot of denial going on right now, or self-justification, those mental gymnastics that we do use to justify, or you're staying very quiet, trying to, you know, hide the fact that you were that zealous about this religion now, this cult that they've created. You know, you're probably very silent right now, but it's coming out. It's being unfolded every day if you're willing to look, but many people won't. They'll deny. They'll make excuses. They'll ignore the truth. That's what ignorance is. Ignorance of the truth. Embracing the lie and ignoring the truth. And that's what these city councils did. County commissioners, board of supervisors, all over this country did. up to and including those shit stains in Washington, D.C. You notice when this happened, everybody was silent. All those people that took oaths to uphold the Constitution, the rights, there's no exception clause for a pandemic when it comes to the Constitution or our individual rights, which is what it is about. The Constitution is not about collective rights, folks. You know, this collectivism is Marxism, it's communism, it's socialism. You know, we're all equal in our rights. It says so in the Constitution. We are all equal, but we're all not all equal of our knowledge of our rights. And that's the problem. You're ignorant of what a right truly is from what a wrong is. And we define that as well. And there are a lot of people who are turned off by that. The minute they hear these things, or they hear me talk about religion, and I use Christianity a lot because that's my experience. I was given the exoteric version of Christianity when I was a young kid. Went through it for 8 years, until I went out on my own and started discovering the truth about the origins of Christianity, the true intent and message of Christ, the figure Christ, whether you believe in him historically, whether he existed or not, is irrelevant to me. I am more concerned about his message, what he was sent here to do, what he allegorically represents, which is a right way of being in the world. Truth, love, compassion, sacrifice, all of those things that the message and the things that he told allegorically in the form of parables to his disciples. And yet I have nothing to do with organized religion. Nothing at all. So my recommendation to you is that if you are going to continue to watch these videos, these podcasts, first of all, no matter what you think you know about me, my persona, my ego, which I had one, I had a big ass one for a long time. But nothing changed in me, and that's the thing, too. I wanted to get back to this overt-covert war issue. And if you haven't picked up on it, folks, they're also putting it right in front of your face. These things that they're doing, either through predictive programming, they're telling us in advance what it is that they're going to do, because, see, when they do that, they have the mistaken belief that somehow they can rid themselves of the karmic consequences of their actions. These dark occult puppet masters up here, they think, well, we'll just tell them what it is that we're going to do. We'll put it right out there in front of them, hidden in plain sight, so we can say that we told them, and it'll diminish the karmic consequences of our actions here. And to some degree, that may or may not be true. Who's going to suffer the most karmic consequences, though? The order giver or the order follower? Whatever your intentions are, it doesn't mean a shit to me. What your intentions are meaningless to me. It's your actions, it's what you actually do and why you did it. Did you do it because you were following somebody's order? And again, although this is primarily directed towards law enforcement and the military, which is why many of you are not going to get a lot of the things that I talk about here. This is for other people as well. This is for the general public. If my message resonates with you, I don't want to go on too much longer here. I'll bring you up to date on a couple of things. I posted some new videos on the Patriot website. Go check those out. Havasu-patriots.com, which is where you can find links to the podcasts that I post up on DesertSagePodcast.com or on the YouTube channel, Desert Sage Podcast YouTube channel. You can get there, watch these podcasts from there as well. It's interesting. I had one of the founding members of the Patriots. We had a discussion, or I guess an email exchange here recently, and he asked me the question about, once you're retired from law enforcement or the military, do you have any obligation to uphold your constitutional oath that you took in there? And my answer was, something similar to this, and that there's no written, once you retire from law enforcement or military, there's no written, you won't find anywhere where it's written that you have to continue to uphold the oath that you took to uphold the Constitution, or anybody's rights for that matter. Nothing that says that, which is what I'm seeing from a lot of the retired law enforcement people that I know, and all in general. Sit back and, hey, I don't have to say anything. I don't have to fight for anybody's right, even though I know what has happened is wrong. I've got mine now. I'm saying get off the couch. Whether you had within you the principles of what the Constitution stood for, or you didn't. Either that exists within you, or it never did. And it doesn't matter whether or not you exercised it or understood it when you were on duty in the military or in law enforcement. Either it exists within you, you think that those principles are within you, those values are within you, or they're not. You won't find them anywhere on paper and writing. They're within the individual. And you either plan to continue to fight for those freedoms, which we are rapidly losing, guys. Those of you that are in the military, whether you're active duty or law enforcement, or retired veteran, career military, doesn't matter. You took an oath. You took an oath based on principles. Understand, go back, if you've forgotten that, if you've got amnesia, go back and remember what it was that you took an oath for. And honor that oath, whether you're working now or not. And that means you have every right to question authority. In the military, if you're given an unlawful order, you have every right to question it. Yes, it's going to cost you in many cases. Same thing in law enforcement. It's going to cost you. You challenge that authority at that level, and many who were released from the military or law enforcement service because they failed to get a vaccine understand that. And I have the utmost respect for those people. I also understand how difficult a decision that is for people to choice to make between honoring the essence of who you are and what you stand for and those principles, and a career that you've worked many years for, and now all of a sudden it's being jeopardized. I empathize. I absolutely do. I understand the difficulty that is, especially if you have a family and kids. I get it. I understand how difficult it is to stay on that hamster wheel. You don't have time to take a breath for yourself. You're constantly repeating, rinse, cycle, repeat. Go to work, come home, feed the kids, go to bed, watch the news, whatever it is you do. It's tough. It's tough. One of the things I mentioned last time was that present moment awareness. Practicing present moment awareness. Those were, I gave a list of things that you shouldn't do or you should stop doing, and some things that you should do. One of the things, the most important thing here as we go into this battle, because they don't want you to think, this overt, covert war they're putting it right out in your faces here. Now, it's covert, it's hidden, the agenda is hidden, psychological warfare on you, but it's also overt in the fact that they put, a 70-some-year-old man with dementia in the White House in charge of our country, supposed to be the most powerful, human on the earth here. The reality is, folks, this guy has no power. He's not calling a shot. Neither are these people in Congress. Neither is the deep state government, people in government. They're not calling the shots either. It goes beyond that. It goes beyond that. It goes beyond that. And I talked about that in the last podcast. This is a spiritual war, spiritual conflict. We're fighting those principalities, that Christ talked about in the Bible. That's what we're fighting. Everything's energy. We're energetic beings having a physical experience, and they understand that. Everything is energy. And they understand, how to manipulate frequencies, how to use all the tactics that they use in the media. the blue screens and the pretty dresses and the soft speaking voices to tell you the things that palatable for you to swallow. And many of you would just stay in your comfort zone because you would much rather avoid the difficulty of telling yourself that you were wrong about what has occurred here in the last several years, but you were wrong in general about many things. I've had to admit to myself I was wrong thousands and thousands of times. I had to admit it to the people that I know and care about as well. But most people can't bring themselves to do that because of that ego attachment. You cannot bring yourself to admit that you were wrong. And maybe you took the vaccine, or several of them, and now you're fearful. You watched an NFL player drop right in front of your eyes on the field, but everybody wants to ignore that elephant in the room. Nobody wants to talk about any correlation between, vaccines that all the 90% of the NFL players were mandated to take, and what occurred on the field that day. Can't even speculate about that. You can come up with all other kinds of things, but do not touch the correlation between vaccines. And I understand correlation doesn't mean causation. I understand that. But it's like in when I was in law enforcement, when you take somebody to court, you arrest someone, they go before the court, there's a preponderance of evidence, whether it's direct or circumstantial evidence, or guilt beyond a reasonable doubt based on the evidence, circumstantial, direct evidence, whatnot. It wasn't based on one fact alone, and that's a problem a lot of people have. A fact is not the truth. A fact is a truth, but is not the truth. So what you had to do was you had to take this fact, this piece of evidence, the fact that they were circumstantially here at that date and time, they had a grudge against, this person here was why they shot him. They were both dope dealers. Whatever the case is, it was all of those factors combined that led to the decision that, juries were supposed to make. Not one in and of itself. So when you take all of the things that happened in the last 3.5 years and you want to continue to deny what has occurred, you want to continue to lie to yourself, you're going to stay exactly where you are. You're not going to grow as an individual. You're not going to evolve spiritually, intellectually, otherwise. You're going to stay in that state of stagnation, that atrophy that you're in. It's your choice. All I'm here is to present information. But I made some recommendations earlier, and one is go back and look at this stuff in the beginning. Or otherwise, it's not going to make any sense. Go back and watch the introductory video, or you won't know who I am, what I'm all about. Even for those of you who think you know who I am, you don't. I'm telling you right now, you don't. I don't care what experience. You may have an understanding of who I am in terms of my personality and my ego, most likely, if you encountered that. But you don't know the essence of who I am and why I'm doing the things that I'm doing here now. You don't know what I know. You don't know what I know. I'm telling you, there is such a thing as objective truth. There is such a thing as objective morality. It's up to you to go and discover it. Satanism is not what the Hollywood version of what, they want you to believe it is. And I've talked about those tenets all the way down, including moral relativism. There is no such thing as objective morality. Then you get down into social Darwinism, and that has nothing to do with Darwin or his theory of evolution. It has nothing to do with that. Survival of the fittest. But that's what they want you to believe it is. Only the most ruthless, the richest, the most famous, those with the right bloodline, those are the ones that should be ruling. And if they're the ones that are ruling, they should get to decide who gets to live and die and who gets to procreate. That's down at that eugenics level that I was talking to you about. And I know this is unpleasant for a lot of people to hear. Again, I don't, I take no joy in talking about these things. But I'm not going to shy away from it. I'm not going to. I have a reason and a purpose for me to be here now at this point in my existence. And I'm going to do the best I can to fulfill it. Don't listen to it if you don't want to. It's not for everybody, and I've said that from the very beginning. This will not resonate with everyone. It simply won't. In any case, thank you for being here. Thanks for listening. I know I got a little passionate, but don't mistake that for anger. And if it is anger, it's a righteous anger over the frustration that I have over seeing what's happening to humanity. I'm doing this for my kids and grandkids. We didn't get into this mess overnight, folks, and we are not going to get out of it overnight. It's not going to happen. I'm just planting seeds. Just planting seeds. I have seeds for trees that I have no hope of ever sitting underneath the shade of. But I'm doing this for my kids, my grandkids, and yours, and your grandkids too. Whether you want to believe that or not, I really don't give a shit. I'm going to continue to talk about natural law and to try to unravel some of these things and provide some clarity. And it's your choice whether or not you want to listen to it or not. I don't care how many likes, dislikes I get, loves, hits on my videos. I know I'm being shadow banned. I know that because of some of the things that I've said. That's okay. I don't care. The outcome is not my focus. I do what I'm supposed to be doing here now, and the outcome I leave up to God, the universe, the universal consciousness, whatever it is that you want to ascribe as the creator of all things. So with that said, have a great day. Peace, love, freedom.